I'd like to show you something that I and others have noticed about the Anthrax letters that were mailed in 2001. In 2002, somebody supplied me with high-resolution copies of some of the letters and envelopes used in the Anthrax attacks. They were obtained via Freedom of Information Act requests. This is the Brokaw letter. You can see the highlighting of certain characters in the letter, which are part of a hidden message Dr. Ivins put in the letter, apparently so he'd be able to prove that he sent the letters, if and when that turned out to be necessary. When enlarged, the highlighting becomes very clear. T, 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 A, T, T, A, T. This is part of, this is DNA coding, and it has meaning if you understand DNA. The controversial T in next is clearly highlighted, but you also see that certain oddities start to show up in this enlargement. The O's are like swirls with little curls on them, and the R's also look very strange. Enlarged even further, you can very clearly see that the O's are swirls. It continues. After completing a circle, it continues on. And the R's are circles also. Enlarged further, we can clearly see that he used the tops of his R's as circles. He began here and went around here. This is a complete circle. And this is highly unusual. No one is taught to draw R's that way. But it is the way a person might draw R's if he didn't know the proper way and was copying an R someone else had drawn on a blackboard. You can also see the O's have their loops. You can see that very clearly. Now let's take a look at the Brokaw envelope. Here there are writing differences start to show up. The R, that R is clearly has an arc instead of a circle. The same with this. R instead of a circle, R instead of a circle. But the O still has a tendency to be a loop. Even larger, the arcs become very clear. Still, he's drawn arcs, not circles, even though he may have tended to want to draw. And his O's are still contain somewhat of a loop. So it's the same handwriting as on the letter, but something happened in between. So what does this mean? Fact number one, between the writing of the Brokaw letter and the addressing of the Brokaw envelope, the writer appears to have learned the correct way to draw certain characters of the alphabet. When he wrote the letter, he was drawing circles for the tops of his R's consistently. When he addressed the envelope, he would draw arcs. He had learned the proper way of doing it. Fact number two, adults do not generally change the way they draw characters of the alphabet between the writing of a letter and the addressing of an envelope. Now let's take a look at the Brokaw letter sent in September and the Dashiell letter sent in October. First thing you notice right away is that the handwriting is about 1/2 the size on the Dashiell letter versus the Brokaw letter. Also, the bottoms are trimmed off slightly differently. He did for whatever reason. Here's the New York Post letter and the Senator Leahy letter. It's also very clear on this that the handwriting is about 1/2 the size here than it is here. And also in the New York Post letter, he trimmed the letter differently. He cut off a side of it. Now let's look at the envelopes. These are the two media envelopes and the two senators' envelopes. Here the handwriting size is not quite as apparent as on the letters, but you can still see that the handwriting here is smaller than the handwriting there. This is smaller than the handwriting there. Also, he only wrote in one size. Here, he drew the same handwriting size as he did on the return address. This is the same as this. He did not write this smaller. You also see that if the return address had been put on here at this size, it would have overlapped. And you can also see very clearly the difference in the size and the numbers is where it shows up most clearly. This zip is double the size of this. This zip is half the size of that, and other numbers are the same. They're smaller, see? You can see the difference there. So, fact number 3, the writing on the letter and envelopes postmarked on September 18, 2001 was larger than the writing on the letter and envelopes postmarked on October 9, 2001. Very clearly. Even the date and these zips are very clearly. So fact number 4, adults do not generally change the size of their handwriting between writing in September and writing in October. Let's look at the Brokaw and Dashiell letters again to see what else is different. One thing many people have noticed is that the Brokaw letter, mailed in September, contains no punctuation. But there are periods at the end of the sentences in the Dashiell letter, and there's a question mark at the end of the question. Strangely, the question mark is drawn with 3 strokes: an arc, a line, and a period. This is very odd. So, what facts are illustrated in these examples? Fact number 5: the media letter mailed in September did not use punctuation, while the letter mailed in October did use punctuation. Fact number 6: adults do not generally omit punctuation when writing in September and then use punctuation when writing in October. Also, fact number 7: widely used methods to disguise handwriting are writing with the wrong hand, writing with the right hand when you're left-handed, or writing with the left hand when you're right-handed, writing upside down, copying someone else's handwriting. Fact number 8: none of the above methods of disguising one's handwriting would normally result in changing the way characters of the alphabet are drawn between in the same handwriting sample, or changing the size of the handwriting, or changing whether a punctuation is used or not between handwriting samples of the same time. While it may be highly unusual for an adult to go through those kinds of changes between September and October, here's what some other facts say. Fact number 9: the 2001 school year in Frederick, Maryland public schools began on August 27th, which is just before 9/11 and just before the writing and addressing of the envelopes. Fact number 10: in the first weeks of first grade, children are taught the correct way to draw characters of the alphabet, like R's and O's. Fact number 11: in the first weeks of first grade, children are taught to write smaller by using lined paper instead of the blank paper used in kindergarten. And fact number 12: in the first weeks of first grade, children are taught about punctuation. Now, how do we sum all this up? The facts say a child starting his or her first weeks of first grade in August 2001 did the writing on the Anthrax letters and addressed the Anthrax envelopes. That was what the facts said in 2001 when these handwriting facts were first brought to my attention, and they became even more of a certainty when it was learned that Dr. Ivins' wife reportedly ran a daycare center in their home. And, of course, Dr. Ivins was mentally ill and would be the perfect person to use a child in this way. These facts are brought out in my first book in 2005, and they are also part of The Crime Unlike Any Other, which is now on sale.